And I know the H1B very well, and it's something that I frankly use, and I shouldn't be allowed to use. We shouldn't have it. Very, very bad for workers. And second of all, I think it's very important to say, well, I'm a businessman, and I have to do what I have to do, and it's sitting there waiting for you, but it's very bad. It's very bad for business in terms of, it's very bad for our workers, and it's unfair for our workers, and we should end it.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Another day, another rant. Today we're going to talk about Elon Musk doubling the number of H1B visas. So if you guys have been paying attention on Twitter, as you know, Elon wants to double the number of H1Bs, and he's been getting a lot of backlash. Some of the most notable backlash he received was when a parent basically emphasized the fact that her son, who was an electrical engineering graduate, couldn't even get an interview for a job opportunity. And of course, the reason she's tweeting this at him is to emphasize the fact that he claims he can't find any talent, but he's unwilling to even interview electrical engineering graduates. And of course, his claim is he wants to get the top 0.001% of talent. Despite that, he isn't actually going through the talent pool in America. He hasn't even attempted or given it a try to the extent that he'd be able to find that 0.001%. And of course, Vivek, who would be a part of the upcoming department in the American government, which would be called DOGE, which is the Department of Government Efficiency. And Vivek has essentially claimed that American culture produces lazy people who essentially can't meet the expectations that Elon has. And so there are, Vivek is essentially seeking to increase the number of H1Bs. And rightly so. He is facing a lot of backlash. And quite frankly, I mean, Elon's response to the backlash is a sign that he doesn't have any legitimate argument, because ultimately he has banned many accounts on Twitter. Not only has he banned the initial parent who responded about her electrical engineering graduate, the electrical engineering undergrad, whose parents said that they couldn't find work. Not only did he ban that account, he also banned a lot of the Groyper accounts, which are essentially accounts of people who follow, basically we could say they're fans of Nick Fuentes, and they repost his content, and they essentially, they preach his message, so to speak. That's the way I would describe it, those other Groyper accounts. And of course, Elon's biggest claim is that he's a free speech platform. He claims that his platform is all about finding ways for, everyday citizens to come on Twitter and speak their mind freely without any concern of censorship, right? A censor-free platform. And if Elon's then going to ban Groyper accounts, obviously he's not about free speech. I mean, if you're free speech, it's not about whether or not you agree with his speech, it's about whether or not you give that person the opportunity to speak their mind. And you can't claim to be a free speech platform if the minute you have someone you disagree with tweeting, you simply ban them. And there was a large number of accounts that were banned. I mean, in total for Groyper accounts, it's probably over 5. And that's a lot. I mean, I'm not even going to say it's 5. It's probably honestly closer to 10, but it's in that range. And those are just the accounts we know. I mean, and again, if we also have to include the parent of the electrical engineer who initially tweeted at Elon in response, basically saying, hey, you're obviously, if you're not even going to interview the graduates here, you clearly aren't doing this because you can't find talent. You're doing this because you want the cheapest wage possible. And you're just essentially trying to find a way to do that under the guise of the claim, oh yeah, I can't find any cheap labor. I mean, I can't find any top talent labor. It's just cheap labor. That's what Elon's essentially after. And, Canada is the canary in the coal mine, because Canada has already done this and it's failed miserably. It's severely negatively impacted the culture. Canada is now balkanized and tribal, and there are many places you can go to that were once jobs that were dominated by Canadian citizens, and now those same jobs are not dominated by Canadian citizens. They're now dominated by foreigners. And this has actually resulted in a lot of corruption, because what's happened is, because of the rate at which people have been basically invited into the country, there hasn't really been the checks and balances necessary to weed out people who are scamming, people who are doing things that are morally corrupt. And so you do have a lot of predatory behavior where you have people who are essentially paying to get a job, meaning that they're willing to give their first paycheck to the people who are hiring them, because they know that the companies want cheap labor. And many of these immigrants who are coming over, they're essentially playing into that system. And so they're willing to pay for their wages. Not only are they willing to pay for their wages, but we have something called the Lima scam here in Canada. And what a Lima scam is, and the reason I'm bringing this up, guys, is because I want to emphasize that what America is about to do, Canada is already doing. So I just want you guys to follow that. I'm highlighting the fact that this has already been done in Canada in a shape or form, right? But to further emphasize, right, H1Bs, the purpose of them essentially is if you can't find talent in America, then what you do is you can basically look for H1B candidates who could fill those positions, because the claim is you can't find any local talent. And so it's the same thing here in Canada with the Lima scam. A Lima scam is when a company claims that they can't find any local talent, but so then they can justify essentially seeking out foreign labor. But obviously this is disingenuous because they're not genuinely looking for local talent. What they're doing is they're claiming they're looking for local talent. And then once they've made that claim that they're looking for local talent, they've legally covered themselves. Essentially, they've avoided being held liable for engaging in a scam, because that's what it is at its core. You know, if a company can claim they can't find local talent, then they can justify hiring cheap labor elsewhere. And that's essentially what they're doing. And then when that cheap labor arrives in Canada, they treat them different, they pay them less, and then those same people who were once hired, because they come from a drastically different culture than the culture that they are now in, they don't assimilate, unfortunately. And, you know, this is the underlying problem here that people are forgetting. Of course, this is going to cause issues from a wage suppression perspective. Of course, that's going to cause those issues. What people are tending to forget is the damage it's going to cause to culture. You know, if you just mass import people and there is really no interest in assimilating those people, they're going to do imitation, or simply, I guess you could say, they're going to duplicate whatever culture is that they left, whether or not that culture aligns with the culture they're moving to. And so this is going to create a lot of division. It's going to create a lot of tribalism. It's really going to harm unity and togetherness. And all of this is going to be done simply so that Vivek and Elon can find a way to get cheap labor into the country. And so I hope that if you're watching this and you are American, I hope that you can really emphasize and, you know, describe to other Americans the fact that Canada is the canary in the coal mine. Canada has already done this and it's failed miserably. And so it's not going to work any better in America. It's just going to be the same exact problems. And unfortunately, and this needs to be emphasized, if you come from a tribal or clannish culture, you're going to do that in America. So what's going to happen is once you have that mass immigration problem occur in America, they're going to exclude the American citizens, because they're going to prefer to hire those of their own ilk. They're not going to hire outside of their ilk. And so not only are you going to have wage suppression, not only are you going to have predatory behavior from corporations, but now you're going to have Americans being excluded from the very companies that were created by Americans. So it doesn't get much more backwards than that, guys. Imagine Americans creating companies, and then the American citizens that come after no longer being able to get jobs because they've replaced the American citizens with foreigners who won't hire those same American citizens. I mean, it's mind-bending and it sounds insane, but Canada is already seeing this at Walmart, Tim Hortons, Subway, and even in higher tech roles and in banking. And so the truth is that, you know, and to be honest, this is already happening in America right now. America already has issues with H1Bs for roles where they don't need H1Bs. I mean, if you go on, if there's websites you can go to which will show you where H1Bs have been approved, and there are H1Bs that have been approved for pickleball. There are H1Bs that have been approved for gas stations and corner store companies. And so obviously these H1Bs are not being approved for top talent. They're being approved for cheap labor. And if that's already happening now, imagine how much worse it's going to happen when the number of H1Bs are doubled. And so if you're American and you're unsure about how this is going to play out, I mean, look at how it's playing out now. It's already playing out poorly. And, thankfully, most people on Twitter are aware of what's going on, and everyone's essentially calling Elon and Vivek out on this. And I really hope that Americans now realize that you can't trust either of these two. I mean, they're obviously lying. They're not nationalists. They're globalists. And if you're America first and you are a nationalist, then you clearly should not be supporting two globalists. So yeah, they're essentially selling out your future so that they can get cheap labor, guys. And I just hope that most of the Americans watching this understand that this is not something you can just turn back from. This isn't going to be just something that once this law is passed, you're going to be able to revert back from. It's going to have permanent ramifications, and it's going to destroy the wages of many Americans, and it's going to prevent many Americans from getting into the market and competing. So yeah, guys, I mean, that's all I got to say today about this rant. If you guys like, please make sure to like and subscribe, and peace.